Welcome back. So what we're going to be going over now is some of the different ways that we can write HTML code, that we can test it, and we're going to go through the tags and start dipping into CSS as well. Now, I showed you Jsfiddle in the last video. This is one way where we can, again, play with code. Again, you've seen this at this point, so if you just want a quick, does my code work? Does it make sense? Do you want to work and send your code to somebody else? One nice way to do that. There's also Codepen.io, where you have a very similar layout, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It renders down here. You can save it, share it with others. Same idea. People will tend to either gravitate to Jsfiddle or Codepen if they're in this area. Also, nothing stopping you from just writing HTML on your own computer. So if I were to, say, create a new got VS Code here, I'm just write a new file, and let's create a new file, save it as test.html. I don't know where it's going to save it. New file. Okay, I know how to use VS Code. Save. Let's just save it on my desktop. This is going to be test.html. Again, if you already know this, feel free to skip over, but I know not everybody is aware. So I'm just going to be lazy and skip the doc type, but I'm not going to be lazy. Let's put the head in. This is my title, and that's not head. This is title. Thank you, autocomplete, for that. It's out of the way. All right. So we have a title, and now we need a body. Let's say H1, this is my page. Change this to H2. And it is super neat. So what I've got here, simple HTML file. Now let's be proper about this. Doc type HTML. And I will zoom in a bit so that you can see what I did here. Took advantage of the VS Code's nice auto formatting. But test.html lives on my desktop. I don't need a server to run a basic HTML file. Right, I can just kind of go to my desktop, test, here's my page. You only need a web server if you want to make your website publicly available, or if you're doing something server-side, such as Rails, Node.js, PHP, .NET, something like that. React as well, we'll get to. If you just want to test something, develop it locally, you can just open it in a browser as well. But if I wanted to share this with somebody, again, I'd have to make it publicly available somehow. So for now, I'm just going to use Jsfiddle just for demonstration purposes. And again, if you're not familiar with the Linux side of things, the Apache side of things, and you didn't quite get it in the last video, everything has to go in the var www HTML directory at minimum for it to be publicly available on your servers. So let's talk about some of the tags. Now, the meta tags go in the head block in an HTML document, and this is going to be just metadata that's important for your site. Could be the author, could be the date that it was created, could be headers, could be something specific to you or your application that you care about. It is not required in any way, but usually it's a nice to have if you are, trying to make something production ready. You will see metadata, not metadata on sites, depending on which one you view. I'm not going to force you to add metadata to yours at this point. We also could have a style block, which is going to be our styling of our web page, our cascading style sheets. Now we can do it inline, we can include a file, we can do it in the page, just kind of depends where we want to put it. We'll talk about that very soon. Not required. There's also a script area that's possible. Now you can stick JavaScript anywhere in a web page. Tends to go in the header block just for, to make it nice and clean. You can put the JavaScript at the bottom. You can put it interleaved if you want. But basically the idea is that this script block is going to be including some kind of JavaScript. And this is going to be basically client-side interaction. just to give you kind of a view here, you know what, let's keep using our HTML page. So if I were to say, just as a little demo, style, and I could say body, background, let's make the background our magic pink color, which if you're a game developer or an animator, this is a nice color to key out so that you have a nice transparent area. But what I've done here is inside my head block, I've added a style block, and then I defined a rule for the body. Now the body tag, if you remember, is right here. I am saying anytime you encounter a body tag, make the background hot pink. Okay, so let's do hot pink. It's beautiful. All right, I could also say H1, let's say font family on a space. Let's make it look kind of, oops, not on a space, not on a space. Okay, didn't need quotes. My bad. I like showing you my screw ups too. Change the font to fixed width. All right, so this would be a courier or something like that if I wanted to show code or enforce the same character space and character width. But I changed, oops, lots of oops today. I changed the font. I could change the font size. Again, we'll get to CSS very soon. But I have a style block here. Now, minor caveat. You might have seen this as style type equals text/CSS. This is a holdover from HTML4. I will probably do it half the time just out of pure muscle memory. It's not required anymore. Browsers will interpret the style tag as CSS because really there's nothing else we're putting in there. So there's our style. And the other thing that I talked about was script. And same thing with style script. You might see type equals text/JavaScript. Again, it's a holdover where we cared about the MIME type for these different tags. If the browser sees a script block, it knows it's going to be JavaScript. So we don't need the type equals anymore. And I can just say, alert, hello there, because apparently we're in a Star Trek mood, or Star Wars mood today. Could have been bad. Refresh. Hey, here's my hello there. JavaScript, client interaction, CSS, styling. All right. I'm going to comment this out. Actually, I'm just going to get rid of these lines because that's going to get really annoying very soon if I keep refreshing. So we have meta, we have style, we have script. Now let's talk about the actual HTML elements we can have. So we have block tags, or sorry, block elements. I'm going to say elements and tags kind of interchangeably. Tags are, again, the front and the ending parts. The element is the whole thing. But we have block level elements, which are basically going to take up an entire block on your page. We have inline elements, which are going to be interspersed in text. I'll show you the difference here in a moment. We have tables, we have forms, and a laundry list of other elements as well. I've got a link to an HTML kind of tutorial / self-certification thing that I'd highly encourage you check out if you have never done a web page before. But block versus inline. Now, the common elements that we have as block elements are going to be block quotes, line breaks, divs are probably going to be your most commonly used ones, at least in current web parlance. We have our header tags, description tags, image tags, enumerated list, itemized list, paragraph. Pre is going to be your kind of like pre-formatted / code block type of thing. But the idea is that it's going to take up an entire block. So let me show you what that actually looks like here. We are going to add a little bit of style just to show you the difference. I'm going to get rid of all of our existing style. So back to this. Now, and let's get rid of this H1 and H2 because it's going to clutter things up a touch. I want to style every single div block to have a border, 1px solid black. Again, we'll get into the formatting and nomenclature here. Basically, 1 pixel border, solid, so it's not dashed or dotted, and it is black. I also want my spans to have that exact same thing. And let's also give them a margin of 5 pixels on every single side just so that we can space things out here. Now, this is going to apply to every single one of these elements that are seen on the page. I can identify them with IDs or classes or things like that later on, parents and children and all that fun stuff too, but outside of the scope of right now. So let's say div, I am a div, woo. And now let's have a paragraph tag, and let's say this is my paragraph. It is it? It is super cool. And a span. Yes, it is super neat. I agree. Okay, so what do we have here? We have a block element, div. We have another block element, p. Inside of the paragraph tag, I've got paragraph, text, and a span. A span is basically just an inline element for enclosing something or differentiating something, and then you would style it however you want to. So when I refresh my page, all right, so I have my div here, and let me zoom in a bit just so you can see. But this takes up the entire thing. The text doesn't take up the entire width of the page, but the block level element does. The paragraph tag also takes up the entire width of the page, or at least the width of the content. Let me add a border around the p tag as well. So yeah, it is the full width of the page. I should have remembered that. But here we have paragraph, and then here's our span. It is inline. So point is, if you want to separate things out, you probably are going to want block level elements. And when I say separate things out, I mean like content areas on your page versus things that are inline. You know, maybe this particular span needs a different color or a different font or a different something. Okay. So here's all of our block level elements. We also have inline elements, and you see, you know, some of these make sense. Some of them are a little hard to parse out. A is our hyperlink. ABBR is an abbreviation. Acronym, we could have an address, a citation, code blocks, italics, keyboard. Basically, we have a lot of different tags for differentiating text because web is content driven. Now, you might be asking, why do we have all of these things? Let me give you another example here. So now let's go over to Jsfiddle just so I don't have to delete everything over there. So I'm going to say kbd, this is my code. I'm also going to go pre. This is also my code. And I'm going to run this. Holy crap, they look identical. Let's even do this a little bit further. kbd, comma, pre. Let's give them a border, 1px, solid, and let's make it green. So it's touch different, right? We have pre is going to be a block element, so I probably shouldn't have used that one. I wanted actually kbd and code. So my mistake, not pre, code, because I want 2 inline elements to show you. So they look identical functionally, right? And under the hood, they are basically the exact same thing. The difference is in the semantics, okay? This is something where we as humans are imposing intent on these tags. KBD probably means it's something typed in from the keyboard. Code is going to be specific to blocks of code. We would style them differently. Or programs or bots or web scrapers are going to parse these things out differently. Just depends. Functionally, I suppose syntactically, basically the same. Semantically, completely different. Just something to be aware of if you think some of these, why would I use EM versus I? They both give me an italics block. They mean different things. Okay, last sticking point here. Not sticking point, but this is where my age will show a touch. So we have the table block, and I've got a very detailed one here. So we have a table. It's got a header block, so that'd be like your top row. And then we have table row, cell 1, cell 2, sorry, ID 1, cell 1, ID 2, cell 2. So we have a 2-column layout here. And then at the bottom, we have 2 that are joined. Basically, this is that merge cell idea. And you can merge columns too if you want. But the thing here and I'll let you figure out the syntax, as we go. Tables are for data, not layouts. So the reason why I was kind of giving you that little caveat earlier on is that tables, for the longest time on the internet, were how we laid out web pages. You'd create a table, your left column would be your navigation, the middle would be your content, the right would be ads or other menus or something like that. Because as humans, it's easy to think of web content as a big table, right? The problem is that semantically, that makes zero sense. Tables are for displaying data. If I have a big web page full of information where, okay, this is, statistics, this is a report of something, this is some kind of an experiment that's been performed, I'm going to list out tabular data. Maybe it's a weather report, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Makes sense to lay it out as a table. Think of it like your Excel spreadsheets. Can you use it to lay out a web page? Absolutely, nothing's stopping you. It will work just fine. But semantically, it doesn't make any sense. So that's why you're seeing a lot of our frameworks that are out there, tutorials and everything, when you're laying out a web page, everything's going to be divs. You're going to have a header block, you'll have a content area, you'll have a footer at the bottom. And these are all going to be, depending on your site, it's going to have a bunch of different rules for how it's laid out. Are you getting that nice Pinterest? Well, not nice, because Pinterest is, I hate that design personally, but that's just me. Are they a bunch of blocks that slide around? Are they going to be, responsive when you resize your browser? This is all going to be div-based, and how they're laid out is going to be handled with CSS rules. Point is, you can do it, but it shouldn't be done that way. So, slight rant aside, let's wrap up here. We also have forms. This is how we transmit data from, say, a front-end web application to a back-end server. If you want to store information, make updates, something like that. Basically, you're going to need a form tag. Now, the form is going to have an action, which is what URL you're sending the data to. Again, usually it's something server-side, like a .php page or your React application or something like that. And then we're going to specify how we send the data. Is it get or is it post? Now get, you're going to see in the query string. Post, it's going to be sent as part of the form data. And you've seen this already, hopefully, with some of our kind of investigations into the headers and all that fun stuff. We also have our various input fields. It could be text, passwords, checkboxes. There's a big long list of elements we can have. Hopefully somebody gets the ancient internet joke here. But the idea is that we're going to get a form. Now here I've got a little demo script where I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this so I don't have to type this in yet again. Copy, paste. Let's go over to our VS Code instance. And let's leave all that fun stuff here. And I've got a form. Now, I don't have submit comments.php set up here, but I've got an input, a text area, and another input. First one's text, second one is submit. So, so let's save that and refresh. And let's add in some breaks so that this doesn't look quite so terrible. All right, so, and let's get rid of this stuff too. Comment it out. Nice HTML comments here. Start and end of our comment block. Save, refresh. Okay, so here's my username field, here's my text area, and here's my submit button. I am a username, I am a text area. Text area is usually resizable these days. And submit. Submit comments doesn't exist. Makes sense. I don't have a PHP script set up to handle it. But what are we seeing here? Let me actually pop open my console. Let's look at the network tab. I'm going to refresh this again. Click submit comments. Touch bigger here. Oops, wrong thing. Okay, so I've I forgot that when the file is not found, basically we get a 404 error. It just kills the form data. So I changed my action to be nothing, which refers to the page itself, which is something that you can do if you want to handle it, on the exact same page. But I'm going to say username, user comments, and then submit comments. And I've got my network tag open here, or my network tab. I'm going to click my test page, and I'm going to look at the payload, and here is my form data. Okay, username, comments, right there. That's where I said before, you can just view these if you want. It's not strictly hidden. If we change this to get, I refresh, and say username, user comments, submit. I see it pop up here, right? So this is just what we're doing with the form. And we would have a script handle this later on. All right, so moving right along here. You go off screen. Very long now. All right, so text area you saw there, basically this is just going to be a large area for somebody to write something. You'd specify how many characters it can handle, make sure that it's not too big, that kind of fun thing. Selects are going to be your drop-down menu. Basically, it's that thing where you just have one thing visible, click the little drop-down, bunch of other options pop up. You can pre-select it as well. Nothing too crazy here. Again, there's a link I've got here just to go through some of these examples. Now, HTML5, this is where it gets a touch interesting. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but basically be aware that this is the move to a more semantic web. We are being a little bit more careful describing our web page, as well as providing new built-in features. So if I'm writing an article, I'm going to use the article tag, for instance. If I'm going to be drawing something, I'm going to use canvas. I can have an aside for a little pop-out type of thing. We also get really nice multimedia elements like the audio and video tags. Before, if you wanted to include media, videos, audio, whatever, you'd have to bring in an external library or an API or a Flash application or something that could handle it, because the browsers would not natively play data. Now it's built right in, and it is trivial to have streaming video, which is great. Idea, though, is that HTML5 brings a lot of power and a lot more semantic intent. Also have headers, footers, nav sections, video, basically, again, a laundry list of various tags that we can play with here. And again, I'd kind of encourage you to just at least check and see what's out there, because maybe there are tags that exist that you've never even thought of. If you've been a web developer for years and you never thought, hey, I can use the code tag instead of a pre-block or something like that. So again, if you have never written a HTML page before outside of me forcing you to, highly recommend you check out the self-study. Basically, it is a fairly long tutorial, but it goes through all the different things that you need to get up and running with a web page. So we are going to end here. A little bit of a long video, but next we're going to do some CSS demos, and then after that we'll get into Ruby and Rails, which will be fun on the bun. Bye, everybody.